Hello everyone, welcome again to another video lecture. This time we are moving on from talking about the different stylistic periods we've been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks now, and instead we're going to do our best to kind of look ahead and wonder, based on what's happening right now in popular culture and in musical culture, what's coming down the pipeline later? What can we expect to maybe see in the future? So I hope this will be kind of a different style of lecture, a different style of presentation, rather than me just telling you this is what happened and I guess this is important for whatever reasons. Instead, I'm doing a little bit of theorizing this time around, and so hopefully it's anyone's guess. Anyone's guess is as good as anyone else's. So hopefully I can make my case, and we can make some predictions about what might be just out of sight for us at the moment as far as music goes. But before we get there, let's look at a quick review. In our last session, we focused on, of course, the second half of the 20th century, so that's 1950 to 2000. During these 5 decades, we saw that music was becoming more commercial. We saw pop and consumer culture coming around. Electrification, electric guitars, amplifiers were a really big thing. For the first time, a large percentage of the American population could recreate the sounds of symphonies and jazz combos and rock and roll and rap artists, all from the comfort of their homes. So they had radios, they had CD players, tape players, so on and so forth. And so this was a very common thing for people to have in their homes. And so, we see the birth of, in earnest, the recording artist during this time. The international sonic palette became more and more complex and sought the input of a broader range of sounds. New genres were born, and the focus of music had begun to shift from form, tonality, and structure to timbre, is what I argue during that. So what begins to become important isn't so much these other aspects, but is a new type of sound, a new feeling of that sound, new colors in sounds. People wanted to hear things they hadn't heard before. Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to extrapolate on the trends of the last 20 years or so in order to look forward into the future. How will music change moving forward? What can we expect to hear in our new decade and beyond? And similar to our last lecture, this is a really complex topic. It would be really shameful of me to just point to one case and say this is why it is. And so instead, I'm going to try to talk about a few larger themes or a few questions maybe that I have. And those things I want to look at are what I'm asking: is this the death of genre? I'm not really sure. We're also going to look at globalization, prosumer culture, and music distribution, and how those things have changed over the last 20 years and what this might mean for us moving forward. So, the death of genre. I put here, each week since 1958, Billboard magazine has released its Hot 100 chart, which lists the 100 most popular songs in the US according to airplay, streams, and physical sales. I want to put out that, of course, in 1958, there were no streams at that time. You couldn't just stream on the internet because the internet didn't exist. But this is how we measure it now. It's evolved since 1958. Year by year, one can trace the palette of the American public by tallying the number of songs in a particular genre that make it on the list. This is not a perfect measurement. This is not a direct translation of what the public may be feeling, but it at least is a translation of what some people are buying, what a section of the public is hearing on the radio, so what the radio decides to play. And of course, there are many different reasons that people buy things or that the radio plays something. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best music out there. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the most popular. People have different agendas, but it is a measurement, the Billboard Hot 100. Some years show dramatic shifts in taste, such as 1983, where nearly 61% of the songs that made the list were considered part of the rock genre, or 1997, where R&B beat out rock, rap and hip-hop and pop to make up nearly 32% of the top 100. So a third of everything that played was R&B that year. So you can kind of year to year see these shifts in what might be considered tastes. But it could also, I mean, in a single year, just be represented by a particularly popular group who's prolific and putting out a lot of music. Yeah, so there are many reasons that these things could happen, but we can see these large trends. According to a 2014 interview with Glenn McDonald, who calls himself a data alchemist, whatever that means, for Spotify, there are at least, and this is again according to him, 1,264 genres that make up popular music. In fact, McDonald has put together a website, which I encourage you to check out. There's a screenshot on the right. That's what all this stuff is over here with all these different classifications. The website is called Every Noise at Once, where you can click through and listen to 5,062 genre-shaped distinctions. I think that's interesting wording there, genre-shaped distinctions, that are kind of how Spotify's algorithm picks. Okay, if you're listening to indie R&B, then maybe you're interested in these other things that might be close to it. So it makes these kind of clouds of what they call similarly related genre-shaped distinctions. So if you listen to one, you may be interested in these other things that the algorithm deems to be similar. But 5,062, that's a very specific and very odd number. I mean, I know that if I sat down, I definitely couldn't name 5,062 genres. I'd just start making stuff up after a while, which I'm not sure really exist or people have ever thought of. So it's interesting that, computer science, big data has gone this direction when thinking about music and when thinking about classifying music. And I think, we all know that it can be a difficult task to classify music, as you guys have probably realized during your discussion questions over the course of the class. The death of genre continued all at once. With so many genres represented in modern music, you may wonder how someone could claim that genre as a distinction is dying. How can I pose this question when we can see that it seems like there's more genres than ever before? Genre refers, of course, to a category of artistic composition, as in music or literature, characterized by similarities in form, style, or subject matter. We see this with all types of art. People like to categorize things into a very specific box. Humans, we know, really love to do this. Some people argue it's one of the reasons that we are the number one species on the planet is due to our ability to recognize patterns. And so our brains really like to, whether it's people or whether it's art or whether it's food or any part of our society, we like to put things into categorizations. We like to put things into boxes because it helps us to view them, although in less relief, less detail. It allows us to make sense of things, for better or for worse. As tools for high-quality music creation become more ubiquitous, the ability for more musicians with a broader range of viewpoints to express themselves comes also. Just in the past 20 years, we've seen the rise of a host of genres not traditionally included on the Billboard Hot 100, including lowercase, glitch hop, folktronica, black MIDI, which is also the name of a band, vaporwave, cloud rap, and many more. And this is interesting here, this Dataface chart that calls tracing the life cycle of each music genre in the US. So you see, as the line goes up, or as you see the line reaching a higher peak, that means that during the year, the corresponding year below, that it made up that percentage of the Billboard Hot 100 spots. So for instance, in 1984, this green line is rock. We could see it was 60%. That was like the hair metal 80s, right? And then you can see kind of where all the lines stack up in each year. So that's really quite interesting. With all of these, new people making music and having access to tools and things, and all these new genres coming out, because so many people have very individualized perspectives rather than kind of record companies deciding, oh, I like your band, and we're going to put you into this box, and this is the type of music we would like you to make. Instead, we have people who are kind of doing things on their own, and so they're expressing themselves in much more individualized ways. We see communities start to pop up, and these kind of micro genres beginning to kind of populate themselves around the internet. Again, people are kind of free from larger management, and so we see them beginning to express themselves more individually. So many genres are coming around. I think something that's really interesting about genre is we have seen the rise of the mashup. Particularly here, of course, we have Lil Nas X with his huge, massive smash back in 2018, 2019, Old Town Road. It went 13 times platinum, Grammy Award winning, and it's been discussed at length in many publications as a signal of the end of genre, or the end of genre gatekeeping, at least. Many of you probably remember there was somewhat, I guess, of a controversy of, there was stories about maybe radio stations that traditionally played country music deciding not to play Old Town Road because it didn't have all of the aspects traditionally associated with what their station might play. It had different musical elements, and they weren't sure, is this country music? Should I be playing it? And there was this whole kind of back and forth about what the song represented or what genre the song was, and it became really difficult to put it into a box. There's a interesting interview on NPR's All Songs Considered. I recommend, if you're really into these kinds of discussions about pop music culture and whatnot, All Songs Considered is an interesting radio show and a podcast you can download. And they had an interview with Stephen Thompson, and he said, and this is a quote from him, "Young audiences, in his opinion, are not as fixated with genre. Everything is available to them at all times, so that they can just mash it all together." So he's kind of pointing out the idea that used to you were beholden to what radio stations your radio could pick up. In your small town, maybe you had 3 or 4 radio stations, and you could only listen to what they would give you. That's what we call push media. We can think of TV as a push media, radio as a push media, maybe even the movie theater as a push media. Well, not maybe. Push media is when there's one person deciding what you get to see. So when I turn on the radio and I tune into a station, I only get to hear the music that station decides to push out to me. But nowadays, with streaming and with digital downloads and so on and so forth, the consumer has a lot more choice about what they want to listen to at any moment. So rather than only being able to listen to what the disc jockey decides is worth me listening to, or what some record agency paid him to play for me as the audience, now I can go on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or whatever, and I can pick exactly what I want to listen to, go onto SoundCloud and find exactly an artist who speaks directly to me. And so what we notice is people have much more diverse tastes. They're not so much interested in, oh, I listen to rock music. But we see kind of younger audiences having more, I think I used the word later, oh, there it is, bespoke interest in very specific, like I mentioned earlier, micro genres. One of the other things I want to talk about was globalization. So we've seen through the 2010s that a big sharing took place in American music industry. So we started to open our ears to international artists, and this was a really big thing. Some of the biggest artists of the last decade, I'm sure moving forward, are going to be a result of this globalization of our ears. Not just our ears here in America, but the ears of folks all around the world. You think of Psy, you think of Bad Bunny, you think of J Balvin, who all have these like massive hits here in America and all around the world. Again, we can probably relate this to the internet in some part or in some way by saying that because people have access to things or to sounds or to voices or to people or to artists that they might not have had access to decades ago, because the internet allows me to instantly reach out and make contact with all these acts from around the world. That our tastes are widening because people find things they're interested in. Musicologists sometimes also talk about the diversification of our country. We have people from all around the world who come to live in America, families who can trace their ancestry back to all different places, and they bring bits of that culture with them. And of course, they want to still hear pieces of that music as they assimilate to or begin to become part of the fabric of America. And so we see, as the demographics of the country change, we start to see music from artists all over who begin to become relevant to the American audience and to audiences internationally as well. Here's a particular case study that I thought was interesting. I'm sure you guys all know BTS. So one of the individuals from BTS, a guy named J-Hope, did a collaboration in 2019 with Becky G. It was a song called Chicken Noodle Soup. The song was largely built off a song from 2006, also called Chicken Noodle Soup, by an artist named Young B, which I remember from a long time ago. What's really interesting about this is you see this kind of blending of these cultures that at first glance you wonder, like, how did this happen? How did this opportunity present itself for these different cultural ideas to bump up against each other? So in terms of form, the song features two major contrasting sections. They're dominated by J-Hope and Becky G respectively. So they each kind of have their own sections where they're doing their own thing. And we could argue this is like an A section and a B section where they kind of trade off. The music changes for each. The style of delivery of the vocal changes as well for each. The video for the song was directed by the folks who do the BTS videos. So it's very big on dancing. It's also co-produced by Nathan Schreier, who's an American. So we had kind of Korean-American crossover in developing the images and the videos. But we also have this interesting kind of mashup between American artists, Korean artists, very specific kind of New York-centered dance music from Young B's Chicken Noodle Soup from 2006, and all these things mashing up together, performing a dance called Light Feet, which was created in Harlem. All these things coming together to make something new. And so we see, like with globalization, with artists from different places around the world starting to collaborate, this provides new opportunities for fusions, new opportunities to maybe possibly break rigid genres and to create new things. So this is just a case study of this kind of globalization thing. We see examples from all around the world coming together to kind of mash up and make something new. The third thing I want to talk about was prosumer culture. Prosumer is a portmanteau, so you push together the words professional and consumer in order to make something new. In music, the word is often associated with the easy access to high quality sound recording engineering technologies that have been made available to a larger percentage of the population over the last 2 decades. So as technology becomes more affordable, you begin to have kind of what you think of as the traditional bedroom producer setup. And I gave you a picture here. This is a very normal thing to see for someone who is, interested in making music. Maybe they don't make music professionally, but as a hobby. But these types of peripherals that they have 20 years ago would be really, really very uncommon to see just in someone's home. You might see these things, this kind of computing power, this kind of software, these kind of speakers, amplifiers, headphones, MIDI keyboards, only available in a professional recording studio. So as the cost of these technologies has gone down, people have been able to afford to have them in their own home and to experiment at their leisure with making music with these types of tools. In his 1980 book, The Third Wave, Alvin Toffler argues that consumers are a phenomenon of the industrial age. He says that as society moves towards a post-industrial age, the number of pure consumers will decline. They'll be replaced by what he calls prosumers, people who produce many of their own goods and services. So he says the industrial age was a time where we had these businesses that were making all these things for us, and then we would consume them as the consumer. But he's thinking that as we get further away from that, and as we begin to have more tools where we can make individualized, bespoke goods or provide our own services, we no longer are beholden to someone else to do these things for us. We now have the ability to do it for ourselves, which is kind of what you see here in this picture. Rather than relying on a professional to record your music, or relying on someone who has access or to a giant studio and all the tools that come along with that, on a relatively small budget, you can afford to do all of these things yourself at a level that was unheard of a few decades ago. For the music industry, this has led to an increasing number of, quote, laptop producers, unquote, and independent artists who have been enabled through the proliferation of affordable, accessible music-making technologies. I have two examples here from two really big names, Kanye West and Steve Lacy. During an interview with GQ, Kanye West remarked, "I just rap into my iPhone. It's the best microphone on the planet. 40% of the college dropout was recorded on a Roland VS1680. The Roland VS1680 is like an older, like digital workstation. So instead of kind of putting all your music together on a computer, you could do it all in this one box. But again, an affordable piece of hardware that many people had in their homes. This isn't something that was only found in studios." And he said 20% of Jesus is King was recorded on an iPhone. So in spite of having access, this is Kanye West, one of the most popular artists in the world at this time. In spite of having access to the best equipment that money can buy and the best audio engineers in the industry, Kanye West instead decided to use his microphone that's attached to his iPhone, kind of a ubiquitous piece of technology that many of us walk around with in our pocket. And so that's really interesting. Instead of relying on someone else to do it for him, he was able to do it himself just with his iPhone. And then Steve Lacy, who's a Grammy-nominated artist, member of the band The Internet, and producer for people like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar, in 2017, released an EP called Steve Lacy's Demo, which was recorded in its entirety on an iPhone. And he was quoted as saying, quote, "I will record anywhere. I get an idea. So shout out to GarageBand for being so mobile and such a good way to get my ideas out." And there's actually some videos out there if you look around on YouTube where you can find him actually showing the process of hooking his guitar up to his iPhone and the entire process he goes through of recording. It's very interesting. So again, this prosumer idea, even the professionals, the people most likely to utilize technologies that are completely out of availability for the rest of us, out of reach, still decide to use these types of technologies which are available to many people. And then the final thing I want to talk about was music distribution. So over the last 20 years, we see a proliferation of sites like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, both of which were founded in 2007. On the presentation, if you want to go through this by yourself, I did put links below. If you've never been to either of these, I highly recommend you to check them out. They're a great place to find new music or new artists if you're interested in expanding your palette. So these websites help largely independent musicians distribute their music and reach audiences. Bandcamp reports that since its inception, it has helped artists on the platform earn over $518 million through the sales of digital albums, vinyl, cassettes, CDs, and assorted merchandise. So they can sell all of these things just by making a free page on Bandcamp. Someone can stumble across them, say, "Hey, this is great, and I want to pay you for your work." You can either set a price and say, "Okay, buy the whole album." You can buy it for $10, or you can, what's very popular, especially on Bandcamp, is the pay what you want model. So instead of telling you, "Here's the price," you say, "Okay, you could download it for free if you want and pay nothing, but you get to decide how much you pay." So a lot of artists do that as well. These two platforms host hundreds of millions of unique tracks and allow musicians to cut out the record companies and deal directly with listeners. SoundCloud in particular has become so popular with young rap artists that the term SoundCloud rap, which many of you may have heard, was coined in the 2010s to describe a style of mumble rap that became really popular on the site. So again, even with these two platforms, which kind of are open to anyone, you do start to see some kind of, I guess, categorization of people from one style of music maybe going to one over the other, or having a larger emphasis on one site rather than the opposite. So yeah, I highly recommend you checking these out. This is a great place to learn new music. I think a lot of these things we're talking about, globalization, prosumer culture, the death of genre, they're kind of all interrelated, because even with this music distribution thing, you can imagine, okay, if I'm a prosumer, someone, just a normal person at home who has access to some technologies that can help me make music, and maybe I have a very unique point of view that's not like these other genres, I can create my own music, distribute my own music, and reach a global audience, all from using one of these websites. So I hope you can see how, even though I'm talking about these as kind of four independent ideas, that they all kind of are interrelated. They all kind of lean on each other and reinforce one another. And so this is the final slide I'm going to go over today. I thought this is very interesting. So streaming in particular as an idea of music distribution. This was from 2008. Fortune magazine estimated that streaming services such as Spotify and Apple Music were responsible for 75% of the music industry's overall revenue. So 3/4 of all the money that comes into the music industry as revenue is made through streaming back in 2018. I imagine that post-pandemic, that number has likely risen. Noting the shift in the marketplace, artists began to adjust their output to maximize profits in the new world of streaming. In an interview with The Verge, hosted on the Switched on Pop podcast, again, I'd recommend if you're interested in these kind of discussions. That's another great podcast hosted by Charlie Harding. Charlie Harding commented on this. He said, one of the main things that has changed is how people are getting paid, and it's affecting how songs are being written. In the past, you used to get paid if you sold an album or a single. In 1995, we had songs that were coming in at 4 minutes 30 seconds. Today, songs are down to 3 minutes and 42 seconds because of the difference in how artists are getting paid. Instead of getting paid by physical sales, so when someone goes and buys the record, that's how you get paid. Instead, you're getting paid in a stream, which only counts if someone listens to 30 seconds of a song. So instead of you going to the store, buying the album, and you don't even know if you like it when you buy it, right? Maybe you've heard a song or two off of it on the radio and you buy the album and just hope you like the rest of the album. But you've already paid. It's too late, to get your money back. You've paid for that album. Now, instead, you have about 30 seconds to decide if you like a song before that streaming service pays that artist and says, oh, okay, you've listened to the song. So if I listen to a song and I don't like it and I switch to a different song before 30 seconds is over, that artist doesn't get paid. Back to the quote. It actually makes sense if you can have more songs streamed at a time, which means that you want to pack your album full of shorter songs. Okay, so the idea is being reinforced here that you will make more money as an artist if your songs are shorter, because if your songs are shorter, people can listen to more of your songs in the same sitting that they were otherwise going to be listening to. If your song is 20 minutes long, you only get paid for one stream. But if you're in that 20 minutes, if I have 10 2-minute long songs, I got paid 10 times rather than once. Not only are songs getting shorter, but the way artists are introducing their songs is changing. Gone is the era of long intros that sort of slowly get you into the song, which many of us are probably familiar with. A song we really love, but it has a really long intro to get to the good part. People aren't going to listen to that anymore. If you don't get my interest in the first 10 seconds, I'm not going to listen to the rest of it. I'll go to something else. I have so much choice. It's not just 10 songs on an album. I have an unlimited number of things I could be listening to. So you have to get their interest in the first few seconds, and you want your song to be short. Back to the quote. So today, we're not only seeing songs getting shorter, but there's a sort of new song structure that we've observed that we've called the pop overture, where basically a song at the very beginning will play a hint of the chorus in the first 5 to 10 seconds so the hook is in your ear, hoping that you'll stick around 30 seconds, which is when the full chorus gets there and when the artist gets paid. So rather than, this kind of artistic, I'm going to make exactly what I want to make, it's all about self-expression and so on and so forth, and you've bought the album and you're in for the long haul, you're going to really listen. Now artists are saying, okay, if I want to make money here, I've got to really rethink the way that I'm making my music. I've got to make it catchy right from the beginning. I want to get that person to continue listening, so I've got to catch their interest quickly, and I want to make my song shorter so I can make the most money. This obviously has a big impact on people who are hoping to make their living from music. Maybe they are dissuaded or de-incentivized from making music that doesn't fit this description. And so, I think it might be worth, questioning what impact this has on the type of music that we are having access to. If artists are de-incentivized from making certain kinds of music or making music with certain attributes, we're less likely to hear music that fits that description or with those attributes. So I think those are all worth listening to, and hopefully they're bouncing around your head. I have some listening examples which I hope signify some of these ideas we were talking about, such as the death of genre. So I try to pick some things that I think defy a very clean box that makes it hard to put it into a single genre. Some globalization here, so I try to pick some examples of artists from various different backgrounds collaborating, or artists who have become popular in the United States who might not necessarily be from the United States, or so on and so forth. I try to pick some examples of prosumer culture, so folks who are maybe younger artists who have taken things in their own hand, produce their own music, people who distribute that music on various platforms outside of major record companies. And then some, like I said, some artists who have become popular through streaming rather than through the radio. So hopefully there's something here that some of you will enjoy. Of course, as always, if you have any questions or any concerns, please email me at kyle.berry@hgtc.edu. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.